So tonight we're going to take a look at the second to last of the Middot in Malchus, and ultimately the second to last step in our process towards Shavuot, which is the Middot of Yesod ShebeMalchut, foundation within monarchy. So there's two aspects of this Middot that I feel are worth highlighting and spending some time focusing on tonight. One is the aspect of Yesod as the foundation of one's life, pshuto kamashma'o, that the Middot of Yesod speaks of what something is built upon, what it rests upon, what are its foundations. And as we've quoted in the past, the Zohar Chadash says in the name of Rav Huna, Kol binyan she'ein bo yesod eino klum, that any building that doesn't have foundations is nothing. There's no building without a foundation. And the same is true when it comes to Malchus, both as in the role of the leader and in the analysis and description of a Malchut Bichlal, is that the foundations are really critical. In other words, what lies at the roots of the individual who is acting as the Melech? What is he in this for? And as the Malchut in general, what are the founding values, right? So, like, let's say Lahavdil in America, they talk about the founding fathers. The reason why they're called the founding fathers is because they founded something. It's not just the ball got it rolling. There's something that has to go into the groundwork of when you're building a new edifice, when you're building a binyan, that lays and establishes the kind of the grounds and kind of sets up the domain. So when they build a foundation for a building. So already once the foundation's been poured, you know the dimensions of the building. Because you've got the entire thing down to the millimeter squared out on the ground. It's got this extra piece that goes out on the side here, and there's a cutout where the pipes are going to go in. The foundation is descriptive of all of the future binyan that's going to come. So when we're dealing with foundation within monarchy, I think that one of the ideas over there is, why did we get into this in the first place? As a melech, as a people, as a community, why are we involved in this endeavor? That's what Yesod ShebeMalchut demands that we question. What are our roots? Why did we end up creating this organization? So often you hear in stories about things like this where people will start with a vision and they've got all this excitement and passion and creativity and they've got this vision, and 5 years down the road they're like, wait, I'm selling what? Like, this is what my entire life is about? And they start questioning because they haven't maintained that connection with the foundations where it all came from. So I think the place where we find this actually straight off the bat in the Torah is right at the beginning of the Torah, where the commentaries, the Midrash, and Rashi quotes that straight off from the beginning, the Torah feels the need to assert to us what creation is all about. This is Rashi's opening comments in the Torah. That Bereshit bara Elohim is Bishvil Yisrael shenikra Reshit, Bishvil Torah shenikra Reshit. Right there at the beginning, you've got to know what this is about. You've got to know for the purpose of what am I beginning this entire process of creation. Because if that foundation is not clear, why am I injecting myself, the infinite being, into this microcosmic lapse of infinity where there's this bubble of tzimtzum that allows finite existence to come? Why is that happening? What is this all about? Why am I doing this? You need to know that at the beginning. So as you're reading Bereshis and you're drawing, as the Rabbeinu Bachri talks about, that the base itself is drawing from the ayin, the chachma me'ayin timatzeh, while you're discovering the first steps of the Torah, smack there in the middle, you have to know, what are the foundations? What is this all about? What is the purpose? What is our motive in being involved in this endeavor? Just appreciating Yesod ShebeMalchut is to recognize that whenever someone's in a position of leadership or authority or involved in any sort of organization or system, they have the responsibility to ask the question, why am I here? How did I get here? And am I still remaining true to the foundations that I began building this edifice upon? So I think another aspect of Yesod, which we've looked at in the past, is the idea of integration. We've seen how in Kabbalistic texts they describe Yesod as an hitkashrut, a interconnectivity of all of the previous Middot and channeling them all with full integrity and unadulterated state into fruition, which is the world of Malchus. So if we take that usage and the implications of that understanding of Yesod and plug it into Yesod ShebeMalchut, I think that part of the idea that we have to contend with is that Yesod ShebeMalchut tells us that within a system, within a Malchut, each individual needs to find full expression. So beyond what we've talked about in previous days, and even in as close as yesterday's, where we talked about the idea of Hod and recognizing the value of each person, a person needs to make sure that there is a harmonization of all of those different aspects that are being poured into the monarchy, into the Malchut, into the system that you represent, and make sure that each and every aspect is coalescing in an appropriate way that does not minimize any of the voices or any of the individual facets of the Malchut. And we have, along these lines, we have the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos in the 3rd chapter, where Rabbi Chanina Sgan HaKohanim says, "Hevei mitpalel b'shloma shel Malchut," that a person has to pray for the well-being, for the shalom, the peace, the integration, the wholesomeness of the Malchut. If not for the fact that there was such a clear, recognized presence that the Malchus demands of everybody, if not for that being there, everyone would be consuming each other alive. Meaning the individual, the way I'm explaining that here is that the individual strengths and kochot of each person within the Malchut would overlap each other, would ultimately kill each other out. The role of the Yira of the Malchut is allow each person to have a clearly understood role in where they fit within the Malchut and allow that integration to be happening. And that's part of the importance of the shleimut of the Malchut. Now there's an incredible medrash that I want to share with you. The medrash Tanchuma says in Parshas Tetzaveh, in the name of Amr Reb Shimon ben Lakish, it asks the question, as we've seen so many similar questions actually from other midrashim in the past, the medrash asks the question, why did Shaul merit to the Malchus? Why was it that he deserved the Malchut? So elsewhere in Shas, I think it's also in Medrash Rabbah, there's a reason given that it's because of anava, the excess humility that Shaul expressed. The Medrash Tanchuma here says a fascinating thing. I thought it was very beautiful and appropriate for this midah. Rish Lakish says, why did Shaul merit to have the Malchut? It says as follows: Mipnei shehaya zekeno madlik nerot larabim b'mevoal ta'afelim. Because his grandfather would light candles in the public, in the dark alleyways of the city. That's why. Because Shaul's Zaidi would go around town making sure that every dark alleyway was lit. It's an incredible, first of all, the imagery. What type of person spends their time making sure that every small little nook and cranny of the village has light? What type of person is that? I think the idea over there is the care and commitment. I mean, imagine, literally, think about what it would take to get a person to walk out of their house at night and make sure that every single street light is lit. There's an intense desire on behalf of the Melech for each and every individual to have their place and feel comfortable and feel a part of what's going on here. Feel like they're not outside of the foundations of the people. It's not like the capital city is where the action and the life of the party is happening, where the Malchut really is. And out there in your little village, I mean, yeah, we'll use your resources, we'll pull you in, and sure, when I come to town, you better come out and celebrate me. But you're really not built on the same foundations that we are. Shaul is zocha to the Melucha because he comes from a lineage of people who were committed to the people, who were inclusive of every member within the society, who wanted them to know that the lights don't stop at the edge of the capital, but the light is extended into your own personal domain. That there isn't going to be a place in the community where there is somebody who can't make it through their day because of the darkness that subsumes them. So this is the lineage that Shaul was building upon. So we find this idea of the shleimut of the Am, of Klal Yisrael, as being critical, especially as we're working our way extremely close to Shavuos, we know that this is one of the critical ideas of how Klal Yisrael will be able to be Makabel the Torah. Right? Chazal say, Vayichan Yisrael neged ahar ki ish echad belev echad, as a single person, a unified heart, that every aspect of Yisrael were all together. There's a beautiful line at the end of the Shlah's writings on Masechet Sukkah, where he says the reason why Klal Yisrael are called Knesset Yisrael, the gathering of Israel. He says that even though down here on earth, even though down here there can be some machloket ultimately between us, but mikol makom lamala besod nishmatam, up above at the roots of our souls, heim achdut echad vehem mechunasim, we're all unified and gathered together in a fundamental way. That each and every member of Yisrael has their place within the aggregate whole of the people. We're called the ingathering of Israel. We're all unified in that sense. And that's part of the establishment of Malchut Yisrael. And he goes on to say that when there is division down here between us, it creates divisions up above as well. But there's a problem with that because we're unified up above. So you're taking something which is intrinsically one and you're tearing it apart. He says, realize how the magnitude of your actions. Re'eh ad heichan magia hadavar. And he says that's why every member of Yisrael is required, lirdof hashalom, to chase after peace, v'liyotam echad b'shalom u'b'shleimus b'li pegam, and to be unified and whole together without any possible blemish. And that is part of the lidamot lekonam, to becoming similar to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So we find this idea of Kol Yisrael arevim zelazeh, that every member of Yisrael, like the Gemara in Shavuot says, Gemara in Sanhedrin, that each and every member of Yisrael has responsibility. We're guarantors one on another. What's a guarantor? A guarantor is that if Ruvain doesn't pull through on his loan, I'm going to step in for him. That's my responsibility. That's what Shaul's grandfather did. Oh, somebody doesn't have a light in their village on their little road, road at the end of the block. I'm going to step in for them. I'm going to make sure that their light is shining if they're not able to do it on their own. That's the role of Malchut, to make sure that the people are all established on the same foundation that you are, that everyone gets to participate in that rock-solid foundation that you've laid as the Melech, to make sure that if they're not, for whatever reason, stepping in, that you step in for them. You bring the light into their lives so that they can participate in that Yesod. And this is probably connected also to the mitzvah of Tochacha that every member of Yisrael has. As the Rambam says, it beautifully describes that the essence of the mitzvah of Tochacha is to tell a person, what are you doing to yourself? You're harming yourself. You're missing out on an incredible opportunity. I want you to enjoy your life. I want you to have the best. And this is why the Brisa in Maseches Derech Eretz Zuta, in the 9th chapter, says an incredible thing. That it says, describing what it says in the Mishnah about loving peace, hating machloket. So Rabbi Eliezer HaKafar said as follows. It says, Gadol HaShalom. You want to know how great peace is, how great unity is? Sha'afilu b'shah she'Yisrael ovdim avodah zara. Even at a time that Klal Yisrael could be worshipping idols. V'yesh shalom b'neim, if there is unity, if there's peace, if there's wholesomeness between them, one another. Omer HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Eini ritzoni lingoa b'hem. I don't want to do anything to them. I don't want to harm them. What, I'm going to mess around with how they're doing and possibly put at risk the harmony that they've got going on? I can't put that at risk. And it continues and tells us that the Chachamim say that this is true on any level of societal structure. The Chachamim say, Machloket bebeit HaKnesset, sofa lecharev. If you have a shul that has division within it, if they can't manage to get along, if they can't be a kahila of achdus, if every 6 months they're breaking off in another little community, in another little shtivel onto the side, it's destined for destruction, says the Brisa. Because that's not what Klal Yisrael are about. What makes us a unified Am, what makes us a mamlechet kohanim, is the fact that we have that shalom between one another, that each and every member is part of it, and is an essential component of it. And as the Gemara, I believe it's the Gemara in Tainus says, that when you're having a Tainus for the community, you have to make sure there's tzaddikim and rishayim involved in the Tainus. You can't just do it just with the tzaddikim, get the righteous guys together. Every man has to be there. Everyone is required participation. And this was the recognition that Shaul's family had, which allowed them access into the role of Malchus for Yisrael. And this is as we're coming up to Shavuot. This is one of the fundamental recognitions that Kabbalas Torah is miyusad upon. That the Ki'ish Echad B'Lev Echad, that the bris that we entered into, which is an eternal bris not only between us and Kadosh Baruch Hu, but between us and each other, between each and every member of Yisrael, and between each and every member of Yisrael, between the arevos that each and every other member of Yisrael has with each and every other member of Yisrael. The compounded responsibility that we have for one another to bring light into the dark alleyways of another member of Yisrael's life is the critical aspect of Yesod ShebeMalchut, and is truly an actionable goal as we work our way towards Shavuot. It's coming extremely close. As we set ourselves up around Har Sinai and we become prepared to accept the Torah, we need to understand, why are we here? What is Har Sinai itself founded upon? What is the base of Har Sinai upon which the Jewish people stood as they prepared to receive the Torah? And that foundation that allowed Har Sinai to make its presence and to have its impact was the idea of Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Lazeh, was the notion that we're all in this together. It was the responsibility of recognizing that as Knesset Yisrael, we ultimately are all unified, and we have that responsibility to embrace one another and to bring light into the darkest and quietest alleyways of the collective Jewish soul. So these are some thoughts for Yesod ShebeMalchut. Thanks so much for joining, and Mir Hashem, we'll see you all tomorrow night for the ultimate final conclusion of our Middot HaYom explorations.